Good morning, world. You awake? You alive? I know one thing. Coronavirus or no coronavirus, it's an absolutely been beautiful days out here in the desert, as I'm sure it has in Southern California, all over. I'm hoping a lot of you will tune in today because I know a lot of you are just sitting at home. Not a whole lot to do. So try and build some reality in their life, give some people some hope. You know, I'm grateful that I have a pastor, Pastor Obed Martinez, that lives in faith, not in fear, and he pumps nothing but positive energy into our church and into the community. Now, that's not to say that we're not cautious and we're not taking the precautions we need to take. Most of us are, but the reality is that I lived in fear all my life until about 14 years ago. I got a recovery, and so I know what it's like to live in fear on a daily basis. I know since I got recovery, since I made my peace with God and turned my life over to Him, and all the things that I do, that I no longer live in fear. It's weird. I can't explain it. It just doesn't come upon me like it used to. I don't know, survivors live in fear most of their life. It's an underlying issue that probably a lot of us never knew we lived in. I mean, I didn't know I lived in that fear until, hey, Lang, I didn't know I lived in fear until about probably 4 years into my recovery. And then as I started getting stronger and stronger in my recovery, getting close to God and doing what I had to do to take care of myself and become born again, be reborn, as they say in the program, I realized I really didn't have to have a lot to be fearful of. Because it doesn't do no good to be fearful. It just creates chaos and anxiety in one's life. And, you know, I'll be honest, I've kissed death twice. Once where I was literally shrouded in the white light, and that's another story for another day. But I'm not afraid to die. I don't want to die. Believe me, it's the last thing I want to do. I got a really good life. I got a great family that I love. I love doing stuff with them. I got a lot of good friends. You know, I have a lot of challenges, but, you know, I've learned over the years that those challenges in our life, they're what teach us how to become the men and women of today. They're what teach us how to become strong men. And when we get in recovery, we can turn our weaknesses around. Because actually our weaknesses can be our greatest strengths, and our greatest strengths can turn around to be our greatest weaknesses. You know, my greatest pain is now my greatest joy. But sometimes the greatest joy is also my greatest pain. But I can thank you, Lane, for doing that. I can deal with that, and I know where it comes from today. But, you know, it's 14 years into my recovery, and I've asked my therapist, who was my mentor for many years and who really brought me out of the pits of hell, to be honest with you. She was such a good therapist. Deborah Mines Pearson, and on a spiritual level as well. And I've asked her, Deborah, why me? Why me? Now, you know, I still got healing to do. We all have healing for the rest of our life, but I just don't understand how I am where I am. And she just simply says, Randy, because you dove in head first and you do the hard work, you continue to do the hard work, and you're helping others, right? You're not afraid to face the truth. Good morning, Lupe. Not afraid to face the truth and work through it. We can't deal with it, because dealing with it isn't healing it, okay? Dealing with it is not healing it. You need to understand it. 100% of the people that told me that they have dealt with it and their life is okay and they're good now. Now, it's 100% of the people that I have spoken with that told me that. Okay, not 100% of the people in the world, 100% of the people that I have spoken with. But they've one of three things. They've either relapsed on the drug of choice, attempted suicide or committed suicide. So dealing with it's not healing it. All of our lives we've been walking around it, we've been walking over it. But like I've said for many years, we have to walk through it one more time in order to truly heal it. And that's the only way that we can really, really heal those deep wounds that are deep within us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue today on chapter 10 of my book, Confronting the Perpetrator. Joseph Campbell starts out, I start with a quote from Joseph Campbell: "The demon that you can swallow gives you its power. And the greater life's pain, the greater life's reply." The demon that you can swallow gives you its power. So I swallowed that demon of abuse for 38 years. And that pain got so intense, so strong, that I had only one thing to do, is I had to learn how to reply to it on life's terms and not as a victim. And that pain was so bad that I replied to it in such a great way that it can't touch me again. I'm not saying that I'm what I want to say, that I'm like a superpower. I'm not saying that I can't be affected, right? Hello, Thor, thanks for joining. I'm not saying that, I'm a superpower, because I do get affected, but I don't let it run my life anymore. But the only reason is because of all the work I've done and continue to do. So we're going to go, like I said, this is part 4 of Confronting the Perpetrator, my book, Healing the Wounded Child Within. And we're going to talk about letting go of anger and rage, which is really, really hard. And I understand how hard it is. I dealt with it for 38 years. I was full of anger, rage, and resentment that just controlled my life and actually ate me alive. For 38 years, I 38 years, I plotted the assassination of my stepfather on a daily basis. But I want you to understand that my abuse started when I was 12, and I was 49 when I entered treatment. So 37 years, okay? 37 years. And by that time that I got into treatment, my main perpetrators, both my mother and my stepfather, but my main perpetrator, Jack, had been out of my life for 29 years. I hadn't seen him. I hadn't heard from him. I could tell you a part of one of the reasons that I resisted that treatment for so long was I went in there for drugs and alcohol, but I want you to understand something, that drugs and alcohol are only a symptom of a deeper underlying issue. And it even says that if you're in AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, it even says it on top of page 64 in the big book, but that liquor's but a symptom. You must get to the underlying causes and conditions. Because if we don't resolve those underlying causes and conditions, if we don't go there, we don't walk through them, then we'll likely, the chances of us staying sober for the rest of our life are pretty much slim and none. Dan Griffin says that if you don't do a thorough, in his book, I think his book, the 12 Steps of Recovery for Men, right? If you don't do a thorough 5th step, if you don't complete your 5th step, the chances of you staying sober are like slim and none. You probably won't stay sober, okay? So what I thought is that if I go to recovery, then that means that I have to forgive my mother and my stepfather for their abuse. And what that meant, because of what I believe the mainstream religion tells you, that, sorry about the dogs, they're my protectors. The mainstream religion will tell us that in order to heal it, we must first forgive. Well, that's what mainstream religion tells us. Now, what I'm going to add to this, okay? And before I go there, I wasn't ready to forgive my mother or Jack. So I'm going to agree with what they say. We must come to a place of forgiveness and moving on, okay? We must. Hold on one second. Sorry. Quiet. We must We must come to a place of forgiveness and moving on. But it's a process, and it's not going to happen overnight. You have to be ready. There's a lot of things that you got to walk through in order to fully forgive. It was about 3 years into my recovery that I did. So, sorry again for the barking. There's nothing I can do. I don't have a studio. It's the bug man. Maybe he's gonna spray away the coronavirus for me. Hey, Kim. So it's a process. There's a lot you got to work through. It's probably 3 or 4 years into my recovery, I think, that I finally, or maybe it was 2, somewhere around there, that I finally forgave my stepfather. I thought that by forgiving them, I was condoning their abuse or letting them go off the hook, right? And a lot of people do. That's what they think. I knew that my hatred and rage was poisoning me, right? Why ironically having no effect on my mother or Jack, none whatsoever. They probably didn't even know that I was holding on to this resentment or this pain or this anger. Okay. A lot of that anger too is being spilled over to my family, my wife, and my kids. Not at first. It took. Well, the anger destroyed my first marriage. I'll tell you that. I went into it with a secret, and it destroyed my first marriage because I was drinking a lot, eating a lot, and I had a lot of anger and rage. I didn't know what to do with it. And then when I got into my second marriage with Kathy, we've been married for 37 years now, by the grace of God. About, I don't know, probably 18 years into it, I really started getting angry, and my family paid for it. See, when the abuse was happening, I spent many of those years trying to make it okay so that I wouldn't lose my family. And that's the thing with survivors, is they don't want to blame their family for it, because by blaming their family, then they feel, well, I'm going to lose my shelter, I'm going to lose my food, I'm going to lose the clothes on my back. And it's a real feeling. It's a real fear of survivors of any kind of abuse in their home. The mom, it must be me, because mom and dad, and they're just doing what they got to do to protect me, But part of that, and doing that, it meant that I had to keep making myself the bad guy, okay, in order to keep up that fiction that there was nothing wrong with Jack or my mother. And what happened was, when I got into recovery, Betty Ford, my therapist, started the process with Betty Ford, an outpatient, and they told me it was okay that I could be angry, because I never thought I could be angry. It was okay that I was mad and angry at my mother, my stepfather, and even at God. But see, for so many years, I've been told, "What you have no right to be angry. Look where you live. Look what you're growing up in." I grew up on the beach. We had a nice home. I had nice clothes. I had food on the table. The typical white picket fence type family on the outside, but looking in, it was not good. So what was happening is that anger, because I was never told I could let it go. I was always told I was wrong for being angry, right? It was eating me from the inside out. It was just sending me deeper and deeper, into this black abyss of shame and depression in which I was mired. I mean, I could do nothing right. So all I knew how to do was protect myself. Even as an adult, what happens is we learn these innate survival skills as children, especially if we're being abused in any way. We learn these skills to survive. And they work really well when we're kids, because there's a lot of kids that we're involved with. There's a lot of kids that we have in school that I found out that were being abused too, but I didn't know it. So we're all kind of on the same page. So while we're in school and while we're going through all this at a teenage years, it works well, and then it works well into our young adult lives, and then it quits working. It just quits working finally. Now, look, I want to say too that not all survivors go through a lot of this. Some survivors can get help very early on, and they're going to have a really good life. because they were able to get rid of the pain and the shame earlier than much later. You know, they didn't grow up in a world that was telling them, get over it. It happened 30 years ago. What's wrong with you? It can't be that bad. Figure it out. You need to forgive, forget, and move on. I mean, those kinds of words do nothing for anybody. Okay, nothing for anybody. A lot of times my anger was the only thing that would save me. It saved me from my depression, my rage, and some of the worst shame attacks I had, because when I felt I was being attacked and that shame came over me, then the rage would come into play. And I wouldn't hit nobody. I was afraid physically, but man, I tell you what, I wouldn't even think twice about telling people what I thought about them, right? Especially if they attacked me, you know. What happens too is a lot of times, because we're holding on to all this stuff and all this anger, that we turn to depression and people pleasing. Or actually, I should say the statistics say that women turn to depression and people pleasing, whereas men are more likely externalize their feelings by turning their anger into rage. So women will hold them in on a, you know, more likely than men will, or men will just blow up. And I was one of those men that would just blow up. Okay. And I wasn't ready, because I wasn't ready to let go of my anger at first. And I wasn't ready to forgive, because it's all I had that I knew. I was comfortable with it. We talk about the sea at adversity that we live in, and it's an uncomfortable world that we live in. The anger, the hate, the unforgiveness, the resentment. There's so much in there, and there's also love in there, and there's a lot of good things in there too. But it's uncomfortable living there. But what happens is that we're comfortable living there, because it's all we know. We know how to navigate it. We know how to get through the quagmire of garbage that's in that world. And so we stay stuck there. We're afraid to go outside of that circle, because we're going to face things that appear to be more fearful, because of the feelings that come up with facing our past, instead of stuffing it and putting, suppressing it with alcohol, drugs, sex, money, whatever it is. So a lot of people will start in the world of recovery and see how uncomfortable that journey gets, and they'll fly right back into their sea of adversity. And it's kind of a in and out game for a while. And hopefully they'll finally get it and they just stay out. And hopefully they have a good mentor that walks with them, doesn't shame them, doesn't tell them what they're doing is wrong, doesn't do any of that, but just walks with them with love and keeps them on the outside. It says, sit there with those feelings. I'm right here. Your feelings aren't going to hurt you. They're feelings that you haven't felt for a long time. You weren't allowed to feel. But because of all the anger and rage in us, boom, it's there, It consumed me for years. We don't even realize it, because it's so ingrained in us. What happened was as I started this journey, that I started to reduce the episodes of that anger and rage that used to last for years, then to months, and then from months I went to weeks, and from weeks to days, and from days to hours, and from hours to minutes. It just takes time. Listen, I want you to understand something, that this is a hard journey, and there's nothing in the world that's going to make it easier. There's nothing in the world that's going to make it happen overnight. This is a long journey. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You've got years of behavior that's ingrained in you. You got years of fears. You got years of mindset that's ingrained in you. We've got to work through all that. We've got to redo your neural pathways. We got to redo the tapes that every time something comes up, you feel like a piece of garbage, right? No, you're a human being. You're going to make mistakes. Every time I fell or made a mistake, it was the end of the world for me. Hey, I'm a human being. I make mistakes. There's no holes in my hand. And that's okay that we make mistakes. That's how we learn. It's if we stay down there, that's not okay. Making the transition from feeling dependent on others for my happiness to bring confidence that I would take that responsibility in my hands, There's a thing called the emotional guidance scale. Emotional guidance scale. And I'm not going to go into it because it's pretty long. But get my book, Healing the Wounded Child Within, and it's on pages 202 to 205 of my book, Healing the Wounded Child Within. Okay. And it goes into a bunch of emotions, and it's rated, I think, 1 through 25, I think. And it's a pretty clear explanation of it on the pages to follow in. But I would really, because as we're growing, we might have been full of anger and rage, resentment, and then it kind of goes down the scale. Heck with it. Hold on. Real quick. So there's 22 of them, right? And at the bottom of the scale, there's fear, grief, depression, despair, and powerlessness. Then there's insecurity, guilt, unworthiness, jealousy, hatred and rage, revenge, anger, discouragement. Okay. So what it might be is that as you're on this journey, right? You might be full of fear. Okay. And that fear, in some senses, has kept you to feel like you're secure and you are worthy, right? So when you realize that it's okay to be insecure for the moment, then your fear can kind of go away, because fear is a protector of insecurity, right? And then the insecurity is what makes you jealous. Okay. And the jealous can lead to hatred and rage, which leads to revenge, which can then lead to anger, which can then lead to discouragement, then blame, then worry, then doubt, then disappointment, then overwhelmment, frustration, pessimism, boredom. Boredom could then lead to, you can go from boredom to contentment, contentment to hopelessness, hopelessness to optimism, optimism to a positive expectation and belief, positive expectation and belief to enthusiasm, eagerness, and happiness. From there to passion, and from passion to joy, appreciation, empowerment, freedom, and love. So you can kind of see how the journey works on recovery, and there's more detailed explanations in my book. So I would suggest, if you haven't got my book, you can get it. You can get it it's on paperback, it's on Amazon, it's on Kindle, and on Audible and paperback. Okay. And I'm going to talk a little bit right now too. Yeah, we got a couple minutes about being in your life is a privilege, not a right. And now, man, I know this can ruffle some feathers, and that's okay. And this is based on my mother was extremely toxic. And in my journey, I had to make a decision if I was going to continue to stay in contact with her and allow her to continue depressing me by sending me into a spiral of shame that would literally last for months. See, society teaches that family is family, and that we should honor our mother and father and forgive and forget. Okay. We'll stop there for a minute. You're right. Family's family. Okay. But also, honor and respect is something earned. It's not, in my eyes, you just don't give it. And so, my mother and my stepfather were not doing respectful things or honorable things to me. So there was no way I was going to respect or honor them. It just doesn't, when I'm being constantly put down, and I don't believe that's what God would want me to do, and forgive and forget. You look at the word forget needs to be taken out of everybody's vocabulary. It's not going to happen. Period. In a conversation, it just can't. Right? We need to forgive and move on. We need to learn and get back, but not forget. My mother and my stepfather were brutally abusive to me, emotionally, with their tongues, with their physical violence, with the sexual abuse. There was no way as a kid growing up I was going to honor or respect them. Okay, and I'm coming from my spot. I'm coming from, and I'm going to go there a little deeper on that. But when I'm talking honor, respect them, that they're going to be allowed in my life. And I struggle with it because I fully forgave both of them. And then I heard Papa Brock in a message one Wednesday night saying that, hey, listen, forgiveness does not mean, and it's everywhere. When I did my research for my forgiveness chapter, that people will be allowed back in your life, or you ever have to have a relationship with them again. Forgiveness is for you, to get you out of the prison. They hurt you badly. And why would I go back into a relationship that's going to constantly hurt me over and over again? So how did I honor? Okay, so here's how we honor. This can bring it back into honor. Okay, I honored them by not assassinating their character no more. That's simple. Yeah, they're part of the story, so I have to talk about them, but I don't assassinate them no more. Okay, they were both extremely broken and hurt people, and I understand that today. Doesn't give them the right to do what they did, but that's how I honor them. I can honor them from a distance. And I didn't see my mother for like 9 years, and she finally died. But had I have seen her, I would have said hi to her. I think one of the last time I saw my mother, she didn't even know who I was. She walked up to me and goes, "Who are you?" So you kind of see, it gets kind of dicey here. I'm not telling y'all what you got to do. I'm telling you what I had to do. Okay? For those who've been sexually abused or abused in any way for that matter, that moral ID can be a recipe for re-traumatization. And that's, I'm telling you right here, this right here, 2 pages of traumatized letter my mother wrote to me that just, she went as far at one point to tell me that it was my fault that she remarried Jack when I was 22, that I should have said something to her. Why didn't I say something to her? And the reality is at 22, why would I say anything to her? Because she never listened to me before. Anytime I tried to bring up something that that looked wrong to me, I was just told to shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. Who do you think you are? It's none of your business. So why would I tell her? There's there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 paragraphs of shame. And believe me, it took me 3 months to get over that shame. And then I didn't have a therapist. I had it when it happened. Okay. So what we have to learn is that we're responsible for our own happiness. So if someone else is toxic to our happiness, we not only have the right, but with the responsibility to limit their engagement with us. I don't like being around people. I'm not going to go out of my way to be with them. I don't like being around people that are toxic. I don't like being around people that are negative all the time. If they're there and I'm in the community when they're right there talking to me, well, I'm going to talk to them. I'm not going to ignore them, but I'm certainly not going to go out of my way. And I'm not going to go out of the way of to talk to somebody and be part of somebody's life that's just going to constantly put me down. Now, I want to say one thing about my mother, so we don't look at it like one of Randy, blah, blah, blah. Look at my mother finally got a hold of me one day, and I let my therapist read the note, and she wanted to reconcile. I says, great, let's do it, but we're going to do it here in your office, so I'm protected, my therapist's office. Well, it didn't work out too good because and I said, we're going to do it here on my terms when I'm ready. She goes, good. My therapist is going to set it all up. She contacted my mom, and my mom did nothing but tear me apart and told me, well, it's Randy's fault. He'd better admit to what he did, blah, 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 blah. And I had already made my amends and forgiven my mother a long time ago. And my therapist looked at me and says, your conversation is not going to happen because she's just going to go after you again. So there it is. Again, hurt people want to hurt people, and they do hurt people. Sometimes it means that you have to make a choice to exclude people entirely from your lives. Hey, when I got in recovery, what did I have to change? Everything. I think there's only one person that pre-recovery that's in my life right now. It's my cycling buddies, and that's it. Everybody else, they're not pre-recovery, they're gone. Too toxic. And I don't need that in my life. I need positive people in my life. There's times when I can be a little negative, and most of my friends, they'll pull me right out of it. Okay. Now it's funny because I remember, when I was 7 years old, making the fort, it said no girls allowed, right? I've changed my mind about girls, but I've realized that I was smarter and more confident at 7 than I was at 47. It's taken me a few decades, but I finally regained that sense of personal empowerment that allows me to choose who I want in my life. I choose who I want in my life. And what I want is that mental sign in my recovery world that I renamed. It's called only persons who bring me joy and happiness allowed. And that included my own mother. I'm here to help people if they want help. And believe me, I walk with a lot of toxic people that say they want help. But unfortunately, some of them can't get past it and they just go about the way they used to be. See, it took my sponsors, it took my therapist, it took my wife, it took all them people to give me some perspective and clarity about my mother, which, believe it or not, has helped me to be more peaceful and happy. Even when my mother passed away, I felt sad for her because she didn't get to know Randy. She didn't know who I was to begin with. And I honestly feel that I was a bastard child for her. And I feel that with my entire heart. And I'm not, that's how I feel. And I feel sad for her because she didn't get to know Randy. This Randy that you're looking at today, this healthy, healing Randy. That's her loss, right? So I learned that part of the thing that I know is that this newfound recovery world I have, it needs protection. It needs stability. It's fragile. So I need to take care of whatever I got to do for myself. Both my wife and I do. It's really hard to do with your wife when you're not used to setting boundaries within you, or your spouse, period, right? So part of the thing with my mother is when I violated my inner knowing that, because society said you should call your mother, and I'm not lying, the big words, but every time I found myself sliding way down to the bottom of that emotional scale, just in a matter of minutes. Just in a matter of minutes. She couldn't accept the fact that I was in recovery. The question she asked me was, "Well, you weren't that bad, Randy, were you?" And I says, "Oh, yeah, I was, Mom. I was pretty bad." She goes, "Oh, yeah, I forgot. Come on, Mom. I want encouragement, not put down." But so here's the deal. I don't want to let anybody in my life that's going to make me feel less than whole and happy and healthy. I wouldn't allow my pastor, I wouldn't allow my wife or my best friend to shame me. So I will not allow my mother to do it either. But I struggled for months with that decision. Religion and conventional wisdom says that if you forgive someone, you should feel fine having them or her in your life. But that was just not true for me. I'm grateful that my mother gave me, put food on the table, and provided a roof over my head. I'm also grateful she taught me about the person that I want to be and the person I don't want to be. But more important than more important than kowtowing to society's mandate, I should let toxic people into my world just because they share my DNA. The choice I made not to have my mother participate in my life is simply a healthy boundary I have set for myself. Now, my mother passed away a couple of years ago, so this was written before she passed away, but still it's relevant to a lot of people that are struggling with recovery. Okay. I really don't need to apologize or to anyone or seek validation from any source for this choice to remove a toxic person in my life. And forgiveness does not mean, you got to understand this, it does not mean that I have to let my mother in my life. She was not only toxic to me, she was toxic to my children. I have a right to my world, I have a right to make my world a positive one, a loving place, where only people who are kind and supportive to me have the privilege of being invited. That's big. Have the privilege of being invited. I don't know anything to anyone who would jeopardize my happiness and peace of mind. And sometimes those temptations come up, and it's hard to set that boundary sometimes, but I've got to know that I've got too much to lose. It has been my experience that only people who are truly healthy or unhealthy themselves, only people that are truly unhealthy themselves will try to make me feel bad about caring for myself. It happens all the time. So that's it for this week on the chapter. Next week we'll continue with we get one extra week here, so we're gonna do a short one. It's gonna be about confronting Jack. Just as a summary on this, look at the anger and the resentment and the rage that I carried for years is gone. But it does. It's one of those things that doesn't happen overnight. And I want people to understand that this journey in the recovery, especially survivors of abuse, emotional abuse, physical, spiritual. I had them all, but it doesn't really matter. It's a journey, and some of this stuff is ingrained in our everyday beliefs and the way we walk every day. So we need to learn. We need to learn how to walk through our pain to get to the healing side of it. And part of that is to come out of denial and face your hate and your anger and your rage and your resentment towards people. I would speak up at the ranch all the time, and these guys, every time I talk about the forgiveness, man, they couldn't get it. But what I did get is I got them. I understood them, and that's what I let them know. I understand you guys. I've been there. But it doesn't do no good. Because all it would have done for me if I would have hurt Jack was it would have put me in a physical prison. I would have lost my family, my kids. I would have lost everything. So it doesn't do any good. You hear it all the time because I look at stuff all the time, and all people want to do is kill a perpetrator, throw them in jail, castrate them, put them in the general population. Well, do they deserve that? Well, probably so, but why don't you go look in the mirror at some of the things you might have done in the past? Maybe they weren't molesting a kid, but why don't you look at what maybe should be happening to you for your past? Remember, God gives us grace. None of us should be walking free right now. I can guarantee you there ain't one perfect person that's listening to this that should be walking free on the streets. If life wasn't fair, thank God it's unfair for all of us. But wanting to hate, wanting to kill, wanting to do all this stuff, you know what? I understand it. I was there. But guess what? That doesn't do any type of healing for you. It might give you some relief that a guy's off the street, but you got to heal you. And by hurting somebody, that's only going to make things worse. Unless you're a narcissist or a Satanist or whatever. You got to heal you. It's not going to heal you by hurting people. You got to do the deep, hard work. I would just implore you all. You can reach out to the foundation, Courageous Healers Foundation. We'll help you. Okay, we'll help you. And abuse doesn't have to be just sexual. I'm dealing with people with emotional abuse. Man, they're as bad off as I am. And I had the whole gamut. So don't say, well, I wasn't sexually abused, Randy. Well, I'm not saying you were, but you might want to look at why your behavior is so erratic and maybe why your families can't figure you out or why you're angry all the time. because it's time to let go of that anger. It's time to work on replacing it. Hey, do I still get angry? Yeah, I do. But here's the difference today is that when I get angry, I'll tell my wife, God, I'm angry right now. She'll go, why? I go, you know why? Because my childhood was taken from me. And she'll go, yeah, I can understand that, Randy. And then it's over with. But what I don't say is because Jack took my childhood away from me. All right? That's not what I say. I've forgiven him. But I'm angry still sometimes, not all the time. But I voice my anger in a loving way to somebody that can understand me, hear me, and care for me. So I'm not saying it's not okay to be angry. It is. We just have never been taught how to properly express our anger. And it's time to start learning. There's going to be a lot of angry people in the next couple months. A lot of people that are going to be extremely mad at God in the next couple months. And that's what we're here for. Matter of fact, those are my favorite people to work with, to be honest with you. Because I understand them. I've been there. Okay, so next week we'll continue. Like I said, I'm going to talk about confronting Jack, my perpetrator, a little bit. It's not what it seems. You remember, guys, my life coaching, changeyourlifestorynow.com, changeyourlifestorynow.com. Kathy and I are certified SYMBIS facilitators. And we're doing a lot of marriage counseling right now. We're doing addiction, abuse, inner healing, and spiritual. And yeah, you know, even with all this going on, that you're out of town, we can do Zoom. It's not a problem doing Zoom. And I'm actually I married two couples in this last week. So, and both of them were here in my house because we had to do it in a small place with a small amount of people. So on the life story, Change Your Life Story Now website, I'm going to be adding a whole marriage page because I'm doing weddings. As a pastor, I can do those, but it was great to have these two couples get married. I mean, we've been counseling both for a while. They're great couples. They're young couples. They've come a really long way. We love them both. So we counsel couples. We go through the SYMBIS report and then some other questions for marriage counseling. Even if you've been married for a period of time, I'd encourage you to reach out to me. Just hit the contact form in either one of my websites, Change Your Life Story Now, courageoushealers.org. Tell me you want to do the SYMBIS report, and I'll reach out to you. It's an amazing tool. It's an amazing tool for people that are getting married or even that have been married. 99.9% accurate. This couple we're doing with right now, they said, I can't believe how accurate this is off of what they did with this test. So I'm telling you, it's amazing, and you don't want to miss it. So that's on that. Whatever kind of coaching it is right now, spiritual. There's a lot of people hurting out there right now, so it's all stuff we can help them with. My book, Healing the Wounded Child Within, on Amazon, paperback, Kindle, and audiobook. Visit our website, courageoushealers.org. Guys, we can't do this alone. We're looking for contributions. It could be a one-time contribution or a monthly contribution that you can set up 5, 10, 1,500, 1,000, whatever. We can't do this alone. I hate that word. We're working on developing workshops and other programs to move this thing forward, but I can't do it by myself anymore. I'm getting way overwhelmed, and I can't hire anybody because I don't have the money to pay anybody yet. So, if you know anybody who wants to volunteer as a ghostwriter, not as a ghostwriter, grant writer, they can do some grant writing. We would really appreciate it. There's grants out there for me. I know they're there for me, and people are willing to support this, but I need some help. And I could really use whatever help anybody would offer to me out there. Just hit me up on courageoushealers@gmail.com, my email, or instant message me, either one, okay? If you donate $60 or more, I'll send you a signed copy of my book, Healing the Wounded Child Within, and a copy of my 30-day devotional. Okay, so we finished our communication workshop. It was excellent. We've already had 2 people sign up for all 3 of the rest of the workshops. The next one's going to be Journey to You, which is on June 13th. September 12th is Secrets in Silence. and December 5th, forgiveness, right before Christmas. So it's going to be a good bunch of workshops. And again, I will post the I'm going to post the website for you, the page. And all you got to do is go to the link and click on the register here button, and you can register right there. Right there. If you sign up for all three of them right now, you can get them for all three for $180 per person. It's going to go to $70. If you just want one, that'll be till at the end of June, end of May. Then it goes up to $80 a person. It's going to be a 4 to 6 hour workshop. It's going to go from 10 to 4, so it'll be a 6 hour workshop. Okay. So I look forward to all who wants to join me. And remember, everybody, through these times, be kind to everybody, right? Be kind to everybody. Love everybody. We're all in the same boat. Some people don't believe, other people believe, but what people need is they need to be shown kindness and love. All right? That's what we all need right now. So be supportive of your community. When you see people out there and you're walking, and just give them a smile. You see people working in the stores, and that they're hard at work and they're keeping everybody up with their food. Thank them for the job they're doing, and let them know how good of a job they're doing. Okay, it's important. They don't have to be there, and a lot of these workers are choosing to be out there to help us. Okay, so be kind to everybody, love everybody. Remember, if nobody tells you they love you today, Randy does. More importantly, God does. All right, everybody be blessed, and I will see you next Monday. All right, love y'all. Bye.